The good news on the state of the pandemic: a government shutdown is averted with hours to spare. And Love, Hate, 8 to end the week. Friday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Friday, October 1st. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. It is October. I cannot believe it. I really can't.
Rocktober, baby. I think October is my favorite month. I was thinking about this last night. I think my month rankings, are October, May, September, April. What about you?
I've definitely not thought about it as much as you. My daughter was born in October, and I happen to love fall. I always loved back to school, which is technically September. I happen to also love the Jewish holidays, like the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. This year, they were so crazy early, but usually they fall around the end of September, early October. So, yeah, I'm with you on October. I love Halloween. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, postseason baseball's coming up. It's going to be a good one this year. By the way, just before we get started, of course, today's Friday, Watch Party Day, YouTube, 9 a.m. Eastern. If you're listening to this and it's not 9 a.m. Eastern, go on over to youtube.com/Cheddar Now. Talk to Jill and I. Tell us your thoughts, your fears, your desires, whatever you want to talk about. We'll be there.
My favorite thing that's come from the Watch Party so far is the consensus amongst listeners is that, Carlo, that you are like 70 years old when you're just
we haven't
in
discussed
your 30s.
That. We haven't discussed that. There was somebody who said, they were like, "Oh my God, watching Carlo, I thought he was this like old guy." I'm like, "Man, really? I'm not that old."
Well, the curmudgeon act, what do you expect?
Fair enough.
Okay, let's get to some news here. It is a new month. Let's just look at where things stand with COVID right now in the U.S. The state of the pandemic is clearly getting better. New cases are continuing to decline, especially in the southern states that were really hit hard by the Delta wave. Florida is down from an average of 20,000 new cases a day in August to just 6,000 a day now. The R rate, that's, if you remember, the calculation of how many new infections are caused by a single COVID case, that is now below 1 in 47 states. That's the huge number to pay attention to when you talk about spread. But the recovery is not equal. Alaska is now experiencing the most pronounced spike in the country, straining its few hospitals and leading some to ration care. And amid the promising decline in case numbers and hospitalizations, the country is on track to pass 700,000 confirmed deaths this weekend. That number would have been unimaginable early on in the pandemic.
I know. It's still almost unimaginable, but we sort of have just kind of come to terms with it almost. It is important, though, I think, to just report on when the news is good, since we always, we being the media, we always report on when it's bad, right? This is one of the reasons I think there's so little trust in the media. I mean, things are getting better. We're not out of the woods, but things are getting better. And they're looking hopeful. I think the fact that there hasn't been a really significant surge caused by school reopenings yet is pretty notable. And it's pretty promising, right? I mean, schools have been open now around the country for at least a month, and we haven't really seen a pronounced spike. So who knows, right? Maybe winter is going to be a mess, right? Maybe there's going to be a big wave in the north just as people go back inside. We've seen that there is some seasonality to this thing. But you know what? I'm in Friday glass half full mode. So I'm gonna take the good news.
My theory on the school stuff is just that they're just not testing kids anymore. Unfortunately, for better or worse. And I think the jury's out on whether that's a good thing. One thing I wanted to mention as well, there were a lot of fears, if you remember, about the Mu variant, which took hold early on in Colombia. And it was feared there were a lot of variations, and it was feared that it was going to evade the vaccines. Andy Slavitt tweeted, quote, "Once 3% of cases in early summer, the Mu variant, based on available evidence, is dead in the United States. No matter how troublesome a COVID variant may be, if it is slower than Delta, it won't survive." So, Carlo, I guess the good news of that is that Delta is so contagious and so bad that it's actually drowning out the other potentially worse variants. And we have, as we mentioned, learned in some way to deal with Delta.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that, but it makes sense.
Let's talk a little politics. A hectic day on Capitol Hill ended with Congress passing a short-term bill to avert a government shutdown, which President Biden then signed with just hours to spare. So that averts one crisis as Democrats continue to negotiate with Republicans on raising the debt ceiling and among themselves on two big spending bills that make up Joe Biden's economic agenda. Joe Biden, by the way, he canceled a trip to Chicago that he had planned to stay in D.C., and he's apparently working the phones. Some have been critical, saying he needs to, like, this is his agenda, this is his party. He needs to be playing more of a just a bigger role. Others are saying no, he's playing it right. He's staying in the back, kind of, and he apparently has all of these policy experts on hand, so that anytime that there's a question about an actual policy and how it's going to play out, he has an answer for them, which I think is pretty smart.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, he's a seasoned politician, right? It's like bringing out Mariano Rivera in the ninth inning. Like, you bring him out to close the game. So hopefully, maybe that will happen today. The infrastructure vote was postponed when it became clear that the Dems didn't have the votes to get that thing done. That vote could happen again today, Pelosi said. The impasse on the bigger bill remains after Senator Joe Manchin said last night he's not going higher than $1.5 trillion. Remember, that bill was $3.5 trillion over 10 years. So, I mean, Democrats should probably just take that deal and not let perfect be the enemy of the good. But we shall see. And just on the debt ceiling, I mean, I know that we'll get this done because we're not going to default on our debt, but only in America is the question of should we purposely default on our debt obligations even something that is like we even discuss as like an issue, right?
Back to what you were saying about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I agree with you because if you remember, okay, now the combined $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, that's the roads and bridges one. So if you combine that with this additional 1.5 that you'd be getting for the quote unquote human infrastructure, you're talking about a $3 trillion bill. Okay, and originally it was meant to be one bill. It was not originally meant to be two bills. So if you early on in the Biden presidency had said, okay, you're going to do stimulus, you're going to do a massive stimulus package, and you're going to do a $3 trillion infrastructure, both human infrastructure and physical infrastructure bill, I think that would have been seen as a win. I don't think that would have been seen as like, selling out.
It's not nothing. No, it's not nothing.
$3 trillion.
Sure.
It's like, what did they say? It's like the New Deal. I mean, and obviously with inflation and everything, but it's much bigger than the New Deal. And how how big the New Deal was under FDR. Just in perspective. Okay, a story to keep an eye on overseas. German police apprehended a 96-year-old alleged war criminal after she skipped out on her scheduled trial. Irmgard Furchner disappeared from her nursing home in Hamburg, Germany, hours before she was set to stand trial for aiding and abetting 11,000 murders when she was secretary at a Nazi concentration camp during the Holocaust. She didn't get very far, though, before she was found and detained. The trial has been rescheduled for later this month.
This trial getting extraordinary attention in Europe and probably will start getting some more attention here as that trial gets closer now. I think the new date is October 19th. Not only because it's probably one of, if not the last of the Nazi trials, just given the age of these people, but also because Furchner was a civilian technically at the time of her alleged war crimes. In Germany, by the way, they call this woman the, quote, Secretary of Evil.
A tweet from Ephraim Zuroff, who's basically, he's like a Nazi hunter. He's an American Israeli. He brought a lot of the Nazi war criminals to trial. He wrote, amongst other things, he says, healthy enough to flee, healthy enough to go to jail.
This, I was thinking about this the other day, right? Because it's like, I was saying when we were talking about the assassins, right? The Hinckley and Sirhan the other day. And I was sort of saying, like, is there a question of like whether, like, is there a point in incarcerating people or keeping people incarcerated when they're this old? Because, like, what does it actually serve? But I think these Nazi trials are a great example because, like, it's this woman is not a threat, but she is. It's symbolic. Right. It's all about the symbolism and making the point that, like, you will go to trial for you will face justice no matter how old you are for something as atrocious as the Holocaust. Right.
And anti-Semitism back alive and well in Germany right now, unfortunately. Okay, the Facebook employee who leaked thousands of pages of those internal documents to the Wall Street Journal will reveal her identity on 60 Minutes Sunday. That whistleblower is also expected to testify in front of Congress next week after providing regulators with the same material that she gave to the Journal, which details the company's research on kids. So I'm glad we cleared that up, because yesterday I misspoke when I was saying that she was going to be testifying in front of Congress. I had seen, I think, on Twitter right before the podcast that she was going to be on 60 Minutes.
And then she will be in the Senate next week. It looks like it's unclear if it's the same person, but it almost certainly is. Meanwhile, there's a separate hearing yesterday. I know this is very confusing, but a top Facebook executive, the woman who's in charge with global security at Facebook, she faced a grilling from senators at the Commerce Subcommittee who compared the company to big tobacco for going after children with a product they know is harmful to their health. It sounds like something I would say. Maybe I should be on that committee. There was also I don't know if you caught this, Jill. There was a very depressing / funny viral moment at that hearing in which Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, one of the senators that I really cannot stand. He just is such a grandstander, and he's like so cloying, I find. Anyway, he sort of embarrassed himself at that hearing by asking that Facebook executive if the company will commit to ending Finsta, which of course everyone knows, or I think everyone knows, is just slang for a fake Instagram account that a lot of teenagers have, and they use as like sort of a side account for just their friends. So nobody asked Richard Blumenthal to explain what a thirst trap is.
It was actually, I think it was more cringeworthy than funny, just because he was just digging in. He's like the woman from Facebook was trying to explain that it's not an official policy, it's not an official account, and he just couldn't comprehend it. It was really sad. Now, I have looked, I don't know if you've seen some of those internal research documents that Facebook had done on just the effects of their platform on Instagram on kids. It is so incredibly troubling in terms of what they found. And I know that we've earlier spoken about, does Instagram have the same impact that maybe TikTok or the other social media platforms have on kids, and we're just unfairly looking at Facebook or Instagram because they've just proven to not be trustworthy, and it's just proven to not be a good company. Their own research actually suggests that Snapchat and TikTok do not have nearly the same impact on kids. They were even saying on this is their own research, Snapchat, fun, social, entertain. You just talk to your closest friends, usually face only, not a lot of celebs. I mean, and they just see the difference. TikTok, they said, just fun, dance videos, things like that, versus what's going on where you go down these rabbit holes on Instagram and you're comparing yourself to other people, and you're striving to be perfect in terms of your posts. And then they even had some recommendations of what they could do to help alleviate this, and they never really did them. They had some ideas of just, maybe taking a pause and certain filters and things like that, and they were never really implemented.
The one thing that they did do, which was allowing people to hide the like count, it didn't do anything. So I think, again, I've said it before. It's like this company. At this point, I was sitting in the park yesterday, and I was just thinking about this because I was looking out at all the kids out there. It was a beautiful day in Brooklyn. All of the Brooklyn babies and toddlers were out in the park playing, and I was thinking about the last journal story about how we were talking about how Facebook said that they were exploring play dates as growth levers, and I could feel my blood boiling watching these little kids play with each other. And I was like, oh, Facebook wants to get in there. They want to get in there. It's not good enough that those kids are playing with a ball at the park. Why can't they be on their phones? Why can't they be on Instagram? I was just like, I had to walk away. I was getting so angry. It's really, it's just wild. And look, I don't know. I guess that just looking at these internal documents yesterday, it did just change my view of it a little bit in terms of these other social media platforms and them not having as horrible an impact on kids. All right, tens of thousands of Hollywood craft workers are going to start voting today on whether to authorize a strike that would shut down TV and film production nationwide. The International Association of Theatrical Stage Employees Union has been at an impasse with the studios over its contract. A lot of production workers have been complaining that the boom in streaming has created untenable working conditions, leaving them exhausted. Yeah, this is something to keep an eye on. Among the things that union is asking for is a mandatory 10-hour minimum turnaround time between production days, as well as an end to the notorious Fratter-Day, which is like sort of a Friday overnight into Saturday shift. The vote to authorize the strike almost certain to happen. The strike still very unlikely. I don't think anybody in that industry wants to shut down again coming after the COVID shutdowns. And it seems to me, just doing a little research on this, again, I'm an outsider, but these workers, they're not even really asking for all that much, right? I mean, usually these contract impasses that lead to strikes have to do with like a serious disagreement over money. This is really just about like, we need more time off because we're working too hard. But regardless of what happens, it's just a good reminder that, all of that content that's out there on Netflix and it's just sort of this endless stream of stuff to watch, it doesn't just come out of thin air, right? There are a lot of people who make it happen.
Yeah. Okay, the Super Bowl halftime show is set. We're talking Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, and Eminem will be sharing the stage at the big game in February. Super Bowl 56 is happening at the new SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. 3 of the performers, Dre, Snoop, and Kendrick, all from Southern California, from the rap scene there.
Yeah, that should be good. I think that's going to be a hard one to beat. Also, on the football beat here, this Sunday, if you're not aware, it's probably going to be one of the more anticipated early season NFL matchups ever. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing the New England Patriots in Foxborough for the first time since Brady left the Pats to go to Tampa Bay to win a Super Bowl. The game is going to pit Brady against his former coach, Bill Belichick, and there's more reports and a new book out there detailing the bad blood between the two. So this will be a good game to watch, Sunday Night Football. There's memes galore ahead of this showdown. And NBC, I don't know if you caught the promo, but NBC is so excited that they actually licensed Adele's "Hello" for the commercial, which if you watch it, it's a little much. I'll send it to you. I linked it to it in the newsletter. It's like, okay, it's a little much, I think.
But why? Like "Hello" from the others? What's?
I don't really know.
I don't get the connection.
Like Brady, Belichick. It's very like cinematic, like these two are meeting again. I don't really get the Adele connect. Yeah.
Okay, I will spare everybody my singing voice, actually. By the way, I think that lineup for the Super Bowl is great. I think that's a good call. I think it's a very good call to have a lot of different artists instead of relying on kind of one headliner and then maybe they bring on a guest.
Well, the Super Bowl halftime shows have been pretty good lately, I think, because Rock Nation is now producing them.
Good point. All right, time for more to know before we go. And we're going to give a little shout out to Andrea for helping us workshop that into something that rolls off the tongue a little bit better. I think I'm going to call it M2K eventually, because we call Need2Know N2K. I
like that.
And I think down the line it may evolve into M2K. And a big thanks to everybody who tweeted and wrote in with ideas and suggestions, because this is a fluid situation. I don't know if we're 100% set, but definitely appreciate all the input. Okay, here we go. The mail about to get slower. New USPS rules go into effect today. It'll affect about 40% of first-class mail, specifically mail that has to go a long way. So the bottom line, if you need to send a card or a letter or a bill to someone that lives across the country, the budget, you should budget up to 5 days for it to get there. Apparently, they're trying to not rely as much on sending mail by air. They want to do it kind of by truck.
Yeah, it's part of like a bigger 10-year plan from the Postmaster General to sort of modernize and cut costs at the post office. Overseas, well, not really overseas, but in Central America, I just want to get on the record with this. A horrific prison massacre that erupted in Ecuador this week has now killed 116 inmates. This is the worst prison riot in that country's history, one of the worst in modern history. And it comes as Ecuador's prisons have become this just horrible, basically battleground between the gangs and the drug cartels there.
New federal immigration guidelines are directing ICE agents to focus on arresting those undocumented immigrants who pose a safety threat, and that immigration status alone should not be sole basis for deportation.
In much different, lighter news, Many Saints of Newark. It's out today in theaters and on HBO Max. This is the much-anticipated Sopranos prequel that stars James Gandolfini's real-life son, Michael, as a young Tony. It's got a 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is my Friday night plan. If anybody needs me, I will be watching this. Very excited as a huge Sopranos fan. I just hope it's good. I really do. I'm going to be depressed if I don't like it.
Kanye West's latest collab with The Gap has sold out in less than 24 hours. The Yeezy hoodie, which is being called the perfect hoodie. It's basically a plain hooded sweatshirt. It costs $90. It can now be found on the secondary market, sites like eBay and Depop for as high as $900. Gap shares, by the way, Carlo, up about 5% yesterday on news that the Yeezy hoodie was selling out.
I got to say, I mean, I wouldn't pay that for that sweatshirt, but it's a smart move on Gap's part, I think, to get him involved.
It really is. I think it was Market Snacks. They looked and they saw that on the Gap website, there's a very similar hoodie. Basically like the same thing.
Yeah, right. I'm basically wearing it right now.
And it costs in the 30s. It's I think $38. So it's a very smart move for Gap because they can really charge a ton more money just for slapping the Yeezy name on it. All right, let's do a little Love Hate 8.
Okay, guys, one thing that we love, and a shout out to Trisha. This was actually, she wrote in with this idea, and I thought it was so good. Just good neighbors, sincerity alert here. But, I think being home so much these past 18 months has just sort of made me at least appreciate that it's really a blessing to both have and be like a friendly and a helpful neighbor. And we have this new apartment and we're more like at the street level. We were in like this big like high rise before. So I just take Franny out every day now on the front stoop. It's like a very Brooklyn thing. And we kind of like sit there and watch the people go by. She's sort of like the Queen of England. People walk by. She has like a receiving line and people come say hi to her as they're walking their dogs. But it's just very nice. And I think after all that isolation of the past year and a half, it's just nice to remember that the other people who are just trying to get by, who also just, make a good neighbor, right?
It's true. My parents' neighbor, they send over their kids to shovel their driveway when it snows. My parents are older now, and it's like, and my dad offers to just pay them something, and they're like, "Are you crazy?" And I just think that it's so nice. Good neighbors are hugely important.
And underrated too, by the way.
Yes. And we're going to keep it sincere. We won't go into bad neighbors. Okay, so one thing that we hate, and this is a personal pet peeve of mine as a commuter, that Waze, the navigation app, never shuts off. Even when you try to turn it off, you got to your destination or you could get there by yourself, it still won't shut off. It tells you all about red light cameras. Just let us live, Waze.
It's funny you say this because you were talking the other day when we were talking about that Amazon robot, and you were like, maybe we should try and spend a little more time on like good technology, helpful technology. You know what's really helpful technology? Maps. Right? I use Google Maps, which is different from Waze, I think. But if you told me, you were like, Carlo, you have to take every app off of your phone except for one, Google Maps is the one that would remain. That's something that actually saves you time, saves you money, and is useful. I am absolutely all about like navigation and GPS technology.
So finally, Google owns Waze, by the way. So Google owns Waze, and I happen to love Waze, and I think it's very good technology, and I use it to get to work. It allows me to navigate and save a lot of time. So I do think it falls into the bucket of good technology. I just don't understand why you can never shut the thing off. And I'm trying to listen to podcasts or whatever and enjoy the rest of my commute. And it's chiming in. And I'm like, why are you still on? Leave me alone.
The lady in the trunk. Okay, finally, one thing that we ate or drank, in this case, just an ice cold Topo Chico with a squeeze of lime, which is not to be confused with Topo Chico Twist of Lime, which is like a separate line of drinks. It's not nearly as refreshing. But as the real Topo heads know out there, there's a big nationwide shortage of Topo Chico. So if you find this stuff, grab it, drink it. It's delicious.
All right, don't forget, we're going to be live on YouTube. We're going to be doing the live chat for the watch party, 9 a.m. Eastern, youtube.com/Cheddar now. Come for the rollers, stay for seeing how old Carlo or young Carlo actually is, and you'll get a little news too. All right, that's what you need to know for Friday, October 1st.
All right, guys, have a good weekend.